This lecture will focus on Queen Anne and Georgian furniture styles. We will also look at the designs of William Kent. This style takes place during what they call the Golden Age of furniture, where many new styles and furniture types are developed. During this time, people have more money to spend on furniture, and furniture becomes a profitable business. There's also this emphasis on function in the design of the furniture pieces. We will look at several different styles. The first one is Queen Anne, which is plain and comfortable. It has curvilinear lines, and it has a focus on human scale. We will then look at Baroque and William Kent style, and this is very elaborate. These were the designs that were created for the wealthy people that were living in mansions. We will also look at the early Georgian style, which is a transitional style between Queen Anne and Chippendale. The Chippendale style has broad proportions, pierced splats, straight or curved legs. It also has an emphasis on Rococo design, Chinese and/or Gothic details. The cyma curve was a common design element that we would see in the Queen Anne furniture style. Here we're seeing it on a back style. The cyma curve can be described as a flattened S shape, so I'm showing you a drawing here of that shape. This is a typical Queen Anne walnut side chair. In this style, we see that it is very plain. It has an emphasis on human scale and function. The back splat is a vase or urn shaped, which was very common with the Queen Anne style. Here we're seeing a balloon slip seat, which could be taken out and replaced if needed. The design of the leg is a cabriole style leg, which we saw in the Rococo style. This design has a shell motif carved on the knee part of the leg. And remember, the knee part is this leg, the part of the leg that protrudes out a little bit further. And then the typical design of the foot part of the leg would be a pad style foot. Here are two Queen Anne upholstered armchairs. The one on the left has an upholstered back splat and seat. It also has a shepherd crook arm and a pad foot. The one on the right is a corner chair with a trifid foot, and both are made out of walnut. Trifid can be described as something that is split into 3 divisions or lobes. So this looks very similar to an animal foot, and you can see that it has 3 distinct sections. That's why it's called the trifid foot. Here are 2 Queen Anne settees. A settee is often described as a smaller scale sofa. The one on the left is displaying the Tree of Life tapestry on the back. It also has the cyma curve used on the back, so we can see that flattened S shape. It has a cabriole leg and a ball and claw foot. The one on the right is a camelback sofa. A camelback sofa can be defined as a central raised area in between 2 lower sections. So here we see that central raised area, and you see it dipping down on both sections. And it has this kind of serpentine back, and that's created by using that cyma curve. This is a typical Queen Anne table. We see the cabriole legs and the pad foot. We also see that the apron is displaying that cyma curve. So this is the apron portion right here. And then it features a starburst motif, and that was very common in many of the Queen Anne styles. This is an older picture of a Queen Anne highboy. It is made out of walnut. It has 2 parts. The top part is a rectangular chest of drawers, and then the bottom part is going to be a 3-drawer stand. And it will always have a cabriole style legs. Here we see that cyma curve, again in that shaped apron, and then a pad foot. Here are 2 styles compared right next to each other. The one on the left is a Queen Anne highboy, and the one on the right is a William and Mary highboy. At this time in the course, it is important for you to be able to distinguish between past styles. And so some distinguishing features for each of these furniture pieces for the Queen Anne would be the cyma curve, the cabriole legs, the pad foot. The William and Mary highboy on the right features 6 legs versus 4 legs on the Queen Anne highboy. And we see the cup turning on the legs. We also see a flat stretcher connecting all of those legs together. Although the apron is shaped, it is not shaped in the cyma curve style. Let's take a moment to review William Kent's design work. He was one of the first interior designers to fully integrate interiors in England using Palladian and Baroque characteristics. Remember, he was an architect, an interior designer, and a furniture designer, and he designed monumental furniture pieces to fit this palazzo-style interior. At this time, I'd like you to pause the recorded lecture and watch the short video on William Kent. In this design by William Kent at Holcombe Hall, we see the application of some of those English Neo-Palladian style characteristics, and that we see the pediment over the doorway, we see classical ornamentation, rich, deep wall colors, accentuated by some of the classical architectural details. When a deep, rich wall color was not used, he usually used a very expensive material, like the image on the left. We can see that the stone that was used really is meant to reflect the prestige of the owner and the wealth of the owner of the home. Now, a few common motifs that we will see in William Kent's work are fish scales, the shell motif, and dolphins. So try to look for those as you're looking at his furniture. Those are a few motifs that help us to identify them as William Kent. So for example, we see clearly the shell motif here. We also see the wave motif that we saw in that classical ornamentation or classical antiquity design. And then the image on the bottom right really reflects that Baroque style, that sculptural form, that use of human form in the overall design. So when we look at his furniture pieces, we see that Baroque influence clearly, but they are more refined and sophisticated than especially the Italian Baroque style. Here are a few William Kent council tables, and this is showing this transition between that English Baroque style and the English neoclassical style. We have very classical motifs throughout the design, and then another thing to note with William Kent's design, especially with the council tables, is that they are very large and monumental in scale. And here in this design, we see the wave motif, we see the shell design, and we also see that overall it has a very large monumental scale. The image on the left is a state bed, and it certainly reflects William Kent's desire to create monumental furniture pieces. Also, remember, he loved the shell motif, and we can see that that's the central focus of this piece of furniture. The image on the right is showing a mirror designed by William Kent. It's called a pier mirror. A pier mirror was designed to fit on a wall space between two windows. It was usually designed to hang above a pier table, and that is a table that is supported by something that looks like a column or a pier. In this design, we see the shell motif at the top of the mirror, surrounded by acanthus leaves, and then we see that classical ornamentation influence throughout the overall design. A shortage of walnut in France forced England to search for other wood sources. So they abolished the import tax in 1721 on woods from the British colonies, which was mainly the British West Indies, and we move into the age of mahogany. English craftsmen began to prefer the mahogany wood for several reasons. Number one, it was very easy to carve. It had a beautiful patina. It came in large pieces that allowed them to create very large case goods. It was strong and durable, and it was resistant to decay. The image on the right is showing the detailed carving that a craftsman could achieve using the mahogany wood. Now, many of these styles can be identified by the type of leg or motif that is used on them. The first style that we're going to look at is the early Georgian style. And remember, this is a transition from the Queen Anne style to the Chippendale style. In this design, on the left, we're seeing the acanthus leaf on the knee part of the cabriole style leg. But overall, the design is very similar to Queen Anne in that it's very simple. There is not a lot of ornamentation. How it differs from Queen Anne is that we start to see more carving, and it does have the pad foot. Now, moving into the middle design, we see the acanthus leaf with the ball and claw foot. And the ball and claw foot can be very easily identified as a simple ball and then there's an animal claw over it. And then again we see the carving. As we move on to the right, we see a different foot style, and that is called the hairy paw foot. So it looks like an animal paw, but then it also has, with that wood carving, they're able to make it look like it has hair on it. In the early Georgian style, we often see something called a cabochon. A cabochon is a circular element, and we will also see it kind of surrounded by a leaf motif. In the design on the left, we're seeing the cabochon right here on the knee part of the leg. And then we see the hairy paw foot. Another design element that we will see in early Georgian style is something called a broken cabriole leg. And here you can see it with the lion motif. And we can see that it is just that cabriole leg is cut out at that point, and that's called the broken cabriole leg. Another common motif from the early Georgian style is the eagle motif. Here we see it extending out from the arms in a close-up view in the upper right. We also see the shell motif, cabriole legs, and the ball and claw foot. In the early Georgian style, we will see that there are many ways to ornament the back center splat. The one on the left is painted, and I love these arms that are coming around and grabbing the back stiles. The next one is japanned. The one after that is inlay. You can see that inlay right here in a contrasting wood, or it could be inlaid with ivory. And then the one on the far right is pierced. Giles Grundy was a popular early Georgian cabinet maker. He is best known for his scarlet japanned furniture, which created furniture pieces that had a deep red color. Many of his forms were exported all over Europe. This is an early Georgian reading chair. It is sometimes referred to as a straddle chair or cockfight chair because it is shown in illustrations of cockfights, and they could sit here, straddle the chair, and that would protect them as they're holding the bird. The design features a pear-shaped seat. It has a narrow back and a horseshoe-shaped crest rail, which supports the adjustable wooden stand. It would often feature a place for you to place your candlestick, so as you're reading, you would have light. Here we see several early Georgian settees. We see some similar characteristics that we saw in the armchairs, in that we have a ball and claw foot, cabriole leg, and then we also have the eagle motif in some of the settees. This is an early Georgian Gainsborough chair, and it was named after the painter Thomas Gainsborough, who posed his clients in this chair form. It features a medium-high back with a wide seat. The arms are parallel to the seat rail, so you can see that they're perfectly parallel to the seat rail. The arms post also are set back from that seat rail, which is something that we saw in the Rococo style as well. Now we're moving into the Georgian style, and this is the Windsor chair. The Windsor chair is England's only contribution to the furniture world. And what I mean by that, it is their original design. It was not taken or altered from any previous designs. It features a solid plank seat, so that's a seat that is solid, it's one piece. The legs and upper turn elements are then anchored into that seat. And so you can see that it comes in a variety of different styles, but the way we determine that it is that Windsor chair is for that reason. It has that plank seat, and then those legs and upper turned elements are anchored into that seat. As you probably already know, drinking tea is very common in British society. Before 1750, Europeans would use the traditional Chinese bowl that did not include a handle. But as the tea became more popular in Europe, especially in Britain, the Chinese later developed a cup that had handles on it that was specifically designed for the European market. Now, as tea became very popular in Britain, they created many new furniture forms to accommodate tea drinking. This is a Georgian tilt top or pie crust table. You can see that the edge of the tabletop looks very similar to the edge of a pie, and that's why it's called the pie crust table. Now this table was designed so that the top could rotate and flip in a vertical position. And how they did that was they used a bird cage mechanism that on top of that pedestal part of the base. So this is the pedestal part of the base. And this allowed the top to rotate. This is a Georgian style dumbwaiter. A dumbwaiter has 2 or more circular tiered shelves, so they're larger at the bottom and they get smaller as they go up, and it's on a pedestal support with a tripod style base. And then the one on the right is showing a brass kettle stand. Remember that all of these pieces that were created were created specifically for tea drinking. So in the dumbwaiter, you may have the tea pot at the bottom and then the cups and saucers on the top shelves. Here are 2 Queen Anne or Georgian style state beds, and they feature the tester at the top with large beautiful fabrics hanging, almost in a canopy style. The overall design is very grand, massive, and meant to impress. The last style I want to discuss is the Chippendale style. This was named after Thomas Chippendale, and this furniture style is so popular that it was named after him. He created the Gentleman and Cabinet Maker's Director in 1754, which was a book that included 200 engraved plates devoted to furniture design. Now, Chippendale took a businessman's approach when he created many of his styles. He allowed customers to choose the style that they wanted. So he created furniture pieces and then he designed them in these different styles. So the main styles were French, Gothic, Chinese, and traditional. He also gave instructions on how to create those forms. These styles spread throughout England and America. Also note that this is in the age of mahogany, so you will notice that some of these furniture pieces have a lot of carving, and that is because the mahogany was very easy to carve. This is a Chippendale ribboned back chair, and this would be something that we would see probably in the French style, because remember that ribbons were very popular in the French Rococo style. You can see that the carved center back resembles those ribbons, and then we also see that it's tied with a bow in the center. This is a Chippendale ladder back chair, and it features something called a marble leg. A marble leg is a very simple leg style. It's rectangular and it ends without any curving. This is a Chippendale break front bookcase. A break front is a piece of furniture that has a slightly projecting center section. This specific bookcase is called the violin bookcase. You can see the violin trophy in the center below the broken pediment. So let's take a look at the individual style characteristics of the different Chippendale styles. This is the Chippendale traditional style. We can see that it looks very similar to the Queen Anne, and that we have cabriole legs, ball and claw feet on the furniture pieces, and overall it's very simple and plain with curvilinear lines. These are a few other examples of the Chippendale traditional style. We have the wing chair on the left with the cabriole legs, simple carving at the knee, and then the pad foot. And then we have the camelback sofa with a marble leg. And this is the Chippendale French taste. You can see that it looks similar to the Rococo style, and that we don't have a stretcher. We have the wider seat on many of the furniture pieces. We also see that it has the shoe foot, and then the one on the right is showing that roll foot, which remember is like a rounded circular design that sits on top of the shoe. But overall the design, it's not quite as light and airy as the Rococo style, and I think that is because they're using that dark mahogany wood in these deep, rich textiles. This is the Chippendale style in Chinese taste. This is carved by Luke Lightfoot for Lord Verney at Claydon House in Buckinghamshire in 1769. We can see the Asian influence throughout the entire space, and Luke Lightfoot was really known for this very intricate carving. And here we're seeing the Chinese Chippendale style. Now let's look at a few specific design elements. We have the yoke crest rail, and think back to when we were talking about East Asia design and that yoke crest rail. We see the fretwork, the blind fretwork, which means that it's not open. It has a solid back. We see the marble leg with blind fretwork, a pier stretcher, and a block style foot. And here are a few other Chippendale Chinese styles. And some of them are very obvious, some of them just have hints of the Chinese influence. And then finally we have the Gothic style, where we see some of his furniture forms take on the architectural styles that we would see in the Gothic style, and that we have the Gothic arch, we have the quatrefoils, the crockets, and the finials. Now here are just a few review slides to help you to study for your test, to identify the Chippendale style in the taste of. So this would be in the taste of the French design, and this would be in the taste of the Gothic design. And this is in the Chinese taste. So that ends our lecture on the early Georgian, the Queen Anne, the Georgian, and the Chippendale furniture styles. At this time, I'd like you to end the recorded lecture and watch a short video on Thomas Chippendale.